Have you ever felt like no one understands the pain you've been through? Today, we're diving into the incredible story of Karen McKinnon Reece, a trauma recovery coach, supervisor at International Association of Trauma Recovery. Kerri, can you tell us a little about yourself and your journey?
Oh, okay. Hi, it's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm Kerri McKenna Reece, and I really got into this recovering from my own trauma. I came out of a really hard childhood, and I felt like I wasn't loved and wasn't valued, and I really, grew up not understanding who I was, and I had all these feelings and emotions I didn't understand. I had been sexually abused in my home for 13 years, and you don't come out of that unscathed. So I went on this journey really trying to find out who I was, trying to figure out my own identity and how I fit in this world and how I was supposed to walk in it. Like I felt like I needed to make meaning of what I had been through. And so it got to be where I ended up a trauma recovery coach and then a supervisor and I went into business for myself and I just had this incredible drive to help other people because I understood what it was like to walk in the world, not really knowing my own identity or, what meaning my life had.
Right. What inspired you to work in trauma recovery?
I was really, like my life changed so much. I feel like I'm on my fourth life right now. And
Mm.
my life changed so much in my healing, and I wanted that for other people. I didn't want people that had been abused as children or suffered the kind of trauma that I suffered, uh, to commit suicide or to feel like their life had no meaning. And I wanted them to have happiness and joy and to know that they are loved in this world, right?
Yeah.
And you can choose who you surround yourself with, and you can gain a better understanding of who you are and you can change the dynamic of your relationship so you don't keep repeating this cycle over and over again. And I wanted that for other people because I was looking at my life and I'm going, wow, like I felt like I was four different people all of a sudden because I had this childhood that was so unhappy and then this young adult life that was so confused about who she was. And then all of a sudden I'm an adult and things are starting to fall into place. And I've got this incredible life now that I love living. And I just wanted that for everybody.
Right. So now looking it back, like, can you think of like what was the turning point that made you decide to help others heal?
I don't know if there was a turning point for me as much as there was that I just sort of gravitated towards it because I met so many people along the way that taught me what love and respect was and taught me how to value myself. And that was something I never had. And I I had met so many people that had helped me on my journey that I feel like I just sort of I was called to do it. There was never a question of, am I going to help other people? I was just all of a sudden in that space of helping people. And I thrived in that space. And not only did I heal, but other people were healing as well. And so I feel like it was a calling that maybe I didn't even see coming. I was just blessed by being placed in the middle of that, and it was an incredible healing journey for me but also for other people.
Right, right. That's great. So I'm Chinese and many Chinese people living overseas or in China, we feel isolated or misunderstood. From your experience, why do you think this happened, like in a complex trauma context?
Well, I think part of that is from a culture perspective too. I mean, when we're raised, our parents run the show in our household and they sort of make the rules and tell you how it's going to be, but they also sort of kind of mold you of who you're supposed to be, and it's done so unconsciously that you learn lies about yourself that aren't even true. You don't have anyone else to blame because you're a child. You automatically blame yourself, thinking you're the one at fault when
Right,
you're a little kid and you're told you're bad, or. So you grow up feeling like you're bad, you should be ashamed for everything, and that you're not worthy of anything else, and that you're powerless to change it. And as a child you are, but you carry that into your adulthood. All these family rules that you're forced to live by. A lot of families are told you don't talk about the family outside of the family. It stays in these four walls, or that's nobody's business, nobody wants to hear what you have to say, kind of thing.
right,
And from a culture perspective, when that comes into play, it's almost like you're being taught that you're betraying your culture if you open your mouth and you speak outside of your family. When really you're not. You're honoring yourself when you have something on your heart, right? And that
right,
if there's an injustice done to you and there's something on your heart. And I think another part of that too is not being believed, because
right,
if the whole entire culture says you don't speak outside of your family, and you go to someone like a school teacher, and that school teacher has that same mindset because that's the culture of that particular place, you know, you get to this point where you're not believed by anybody, and then you're forced to shut yourself down. So I feel like it's really hard from a culture perspective a lot of times. And it's not just the Chinese culture. Every culture is different, but that I feel like that's a big part of it.
true, so true. So what are some common signs of trauma that people might not recognize in themselves if they don't know like what is complex trauma?
Yeah. If you find yourself overly emotional and it doesn't go in line with the situation, that's part of it.
Mm,
That's, when your mind and your body is being triggered to the chaos of the past, something that's unresolved. Or if
right,
you having a lot of people, I know for me, I had an addiction to staying safe. So it wasn't drugs or alcohol with me, and it wasn't like playing video games or porn or anything like that. Because there's a lot of process addictions, but a
yeah,
lot of people have this addiction to staying safe where they just won't open up to anybody. They don't show feelings, and they walk into every relationship, one foot in the door and one foot out. And they don't
right,
even realize that they're doing it. But if you sit down and look at your relationships, it all goes back to trust. Your primary place where you were growing up, you didn't feel like you could trust anybody. So why would you think you could trust anybody else in the world, right?
right,
And
right.
if you do something repeatedly that's going against um that's causing you harm, like if you're overworking, right?
Yeah,
If a lot of people get addicted to going to the gym, it's not just about drugs and alcohol, because there's a lot of people walking around today that don't have drug and alcohol addictions. They have control, they want to be in control of everything. That's another really common one.
yes, yes, for sure. Workaholic and controlling. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. So how does trauma affect like intimate relationships, especially like within the families? I think that's a common one.
Oh yeah. Well, when your first example is not a good example of family and relationships, you carry that on because you
Right,
grow up with your system always feeling like you're unsafe, right?
right, right.
And so your nervous system develops in a very hypervigilant manner. And so you learn how to relate to other people through the way that your parents related to you.
For
So if
sure.
you're yelled at all the time, or,
Mm.
shut down, that's how you relate to other people. And you get this, they're setting the example for how you're supposed to relate. So
Mm.
It definitely, oh my goodness, that's the hardest thing right there. It's not when you feel like when you grow up in a home where you feel like you don't fit in, you absolutely feel like you don't fit in anywhere in any kind of relationship.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so I think overcoming complex trauma for me is to live out the true self and have meaningful connection. So in regard of a personal connection, Kerri, do you mind to share like what were some of the biggest challenges you face in your own recovery journey?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. I feel like my biggest challenge was sitting in my feelings and emotions. That was really hard because I had been terribly abused as a kid, and to sit in those feelings and emotions was not a place I could sit in comfortably. But I had to learn how to do that in order to heal because I had to sort out my feelings to get an understanding of them. And it wasn't until I sat in those feelings and emotions and I started really looking deeply at myself to understand what I was feeling and why I was feeling that way that I could tie it to the past and really get a clear understanding of what happened, right? Your brain is always wanting to make meaning. And as a child, if you're forced to shut yourself down, there is no meaning. All gets trapped in the body. And I like to say the issue is in the tissue because you get triggered and all of a sudden you're an emotional wreck and you don't understand, oh my God, what, what is wrong with me?
Right,
It's
right.
not that anything is wrong with you. It's
True.
just that you have a lot of unresolved feelings and emotions there, and your brain's trying to make meaning of it. And, until you sit down and give yourself that opportunity to really, really get to know yourself and to see things for what they are, I think that was the hardest for me. By far, that was the hardest. And it's something I still have to do today. I
Right.
still get triggered some and I have to go like, wow, where is this coming from? It's okay. I have to sit down and really look at it, and weigh it and figure out where it's coming from. But that I think was by far the hardest.
Hmm. I'm pretty sure many people can relate to you.
Yeah.
Um,
And let me add something here too. I think
sure.
understanding your needs is a big one too, because when you're feeling, I was having all these feelings that I didn't understand. And when I was sitting down and trying to really get a clear understanding of what I was feeling and why I was feeling that way, it all went back to needs. Like I had a need in that moment. And from those needs, I was able to, put some boundaries in place to help me move forward. And when you come out of a home where you're not nurtured, you don't know what your needs are, right?
Right.
So it was, we all have like something that's really valuable to us in life, as far as mine is respect. I value respect to the highest, and
Right.
I want to give it to other people as much as I expect it. Um, but so when I was disrespected, it was like this huge trigger for me, right? But it took me years to understand, oh my gosh, this is what's going on here. I don't feel like I'm being respected. It's tying back to being abused as a child. So once I started understanding my needs as an adult, as a young adult, I was able to put some, boundaries in place to move forward in a healthier way.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks.
Mhm.
Um, so Carrie, what's one piece of advice you wish someone had given you when you were struggling?
Oh, when I was struggling, boy, I would have loved it. I feel like my life would have been totally different if when I was 4 years old, when I went and I told my mother about the abuse, if she had said to me, you haven't done anything wrong. The person that has hurt you is really evil. You haven't
Right.
done anything wrong, right? I
Yeah.
think that would have changed the whole dynamic of my life. And because
Yeah.
because I was shamed for being abused and the abuse wasn't stopped, I didn't speak out to anybody else for years and years and years. So I
Wow.
never felt seen, heard, or valued because I always was carrying these massive secrets with me,
Yeah.
right? That I
Yeah.
felt like I was forced to keep.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that would have made a huge difference for me. And as I got older, I think the first time I really spoke about it and spoke it out loud to somebody, the first thing they said was, "Wow, like um, there's really nothing you could have done in that situation, and it's unfortunate that someone didn't step in for you, right? Because you were just a child, and we're not equipped as children." But
Right,
I internalized it as I did something wrong,
right, right.
right?
Such a deep pain, and you need the love and support, and
Well, yeah, and that's where you internalize those beliefs of I'm bad and I should be
right,
ashamed and I'm not worth anymore, right?
right, right.
Yeah.
For sure. Those deep self-defeating belief.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
For someone watching who feels stuck, what's the first step they can take toward healing?
Well, if they're comfortable talking with someone else, I would encourage them to do that. I did a
Right.
lot of journaling as a child, and I was doing vision boards with a crayon and a piece of notebook paper before vision boards even had a name. I mean, I didn't even realize it was self-care then until I got older and saw everybody else doing it, right? It was just
Right.
me being with me and you
Yeah.
know, journaling to me and sitting with myself in silence, it helped me touch the deepest parts of my soul, right? So I feel like giving myself that space was really helpful. So if they can do that as an adult, that's helpful. Um, or going and talking to someone. And there's a lot of local groups. A lot of times, I don't know about in China, but I know in the States, there's a lot of free local groups that people can join to go and meet, face to face and meet some other people. Because when you hear somebody else's story, you can truly relate to them. And as the stories unfold, you start helping each other heal. And that's a really positive step moving forward. I did that myself too as a young adult. I was volunteering my time for the crisis center here.
Mm.
And so I met a lot of people that had been abused, and it kind of helped me put a lot of words to feelings and emotions I didn't understand. And that was really helpful because they were relatable to me, and I no longer felt like I was alone in that sense.
Right, right. Yeah. Great. Great. And then can you touch a little bit like with complex trauma recovery, like how we can kind of be the safe person because hurt people, right?
Yeah,
And also like I found it's really hard to recognize safe people.
that's true. We emotionally regulate off of each other. So
Right,
if you show up and you're dysregulated and you're really triggered by something, that's going to trigger me.
right,
So it's about really being able to have conversations and step away where you don't feel comfortable. Like if I know I've had many conversations with you in the past, and I don't really shy away from saying, I'm not really feeling like this is settling well on me right now. How about if we touch on this later? I think
right.
understanding yourself to the point where you understand that you have to walk away in that moment, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Not It's about honoring yourself, but honoring the other person. And that sort of creates a safe space for you because if I just hung up the phone on you or whatever,
yeah.
that's not creating a safe space. But I think if you have those relationships where you can be honest with yourself by also honoring them and just saying, Jing, I'm so glad that you brought that up, but I can't talk about that right now.
Right, right. Yeah,
Um, it's creating a dynamic where you give each other time to rest in your thoughts and regroup later on and have a conversation where you can be calm and settled and open-minded about it.
right, sure. So you kind of touch a bit about this setting healthy boundary too, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's important because I feel like there's so much we don't understand about each other. The first thing is we don't understand what we're feeling when we're triggered. And the second thing is we're so used to no one being there for us that we take offense to that other person. So it's
Right,
learning how to stand in compassion and understanding versus standing in judgment, right?
right,
So
right.
I want to understand why you're feeling that way and why you're saying what you're saying, but I'm
Right,
not in a position to do it now because I'm triggered.
right.
Let me take some time for myself and maybe we can have coffee later and have a
Mm,
conversation and then just be honest. Like I always say, I'm so glad that you brought this up because it shows me that there's some place in me that needs growth, right? I'm triggered for some reason and I need to have a conversation about it.
right,
But you
right,
also want to feel safe with that person, right? If that person's like, "No, I don't want to meet later," then you know that that's not the person for you.
right, right.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. The self-awareness is important too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm. Um, So you mentioned earlier that, because our childhood complex trauma, we have this negative self-talk that, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. So how can people start to rebuild their self-worth after years of being, invisible or unworthy or being abused?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I don't really like to I've heard people say
Mm,
befriend this or befriend that. I'm not saying that's the wrong word to use. I don't like to use that word. I like to tell people that you need to um I mean it's a part of you, so you have to understand it, right? You
mm,
need to embrace it and say, "Okay, I hear what you're saying, uh, but tell me why you're saying it."
mm,
Right? Because
right.
if it goes back to, well, my mom said that when I was younger,
Yeah.
right? Okay, but how does that really apply to you?
Mm,
So I think you have to find, I used to have a really bad temper and I had to figure out how I could get that temper to work in the favor of doing good in the world instead of
right.
doing bad in the world, right? So it's about coming alongside it and standing in compassion and saying, let's get to know each other, right?
Mm, mm,
Because that's a piece of your soul that is crying out. It's like little Jane or little Kerri McKenna,
right,
right?
right.
Crying out, wanting to be understood. And
Mm,
because they're not understood, they're very triggered, right?
mm, mm.
So
Almost,
it's
yeah,
gaining a clear understanding of it.
right, right. Almost felt like you were talking about the process of reparenting too, right?
It is very much reparenting because you're trying to understand yourself. And it's like our youngest granddaughter, she's 2 and she doesn't have many words. So it's hard for her to explain herself. And you have to sit down and actually ask a lot of questions and see what they understand, what they don't understand, learn how to read their language. It's the same thing for what's going on inside of you. You have an injury in there and it might be stuck at the age of 2 or the age of 4 or the age of 13. If you've ever been in a situation where there's conflict and you feel like a very young version of yourself, there's
Mm,
healing that needs to be done there.
right, right. Yeah, definitely. Um, so Carrie, what role does connection and community play in trauma recovery? Because we have trouble of trusting people from the complex trauma or our own family of origin.
Yeah. It really, you have to surround yourself with people that you can relate to.
Mm,
It's not just relating to them, though. It's surrounding yourself with people that are relatable, but it's also people that are looking to heal. I mean, if you're surrounding yourself with people that are relatable, but they're not doing anything to heal and they're staying stuck in that cycle of abuse and they're uh and the behaviors that don't serve them. Well, I don't like to say bad behaviors because they're not bad behaviors. They're survival
right.
techniques that they've, you know,
Yeah.
adopted over the years.
Yeah.
Um,
Survival mode.
yeah, really. So it's kind of like the way you and I met, we came upon each other in a mutual space and we bonded like that.
Mm,
Uh because we were on a journey to heal. So I think when it comes to community, you have to surround yourself with like-minded people. And if you're, my dad used to say all the time, if you run with dogs, you're going to get fleas,
Mm,
right? And what he
right.
was saying was, is you're really going to become the product of your environment and where you're keeping yourself. So,
True.
for me, I looked at, where I was keeping my shoes and the journey I was on, and it's not about hating people, it's just understanding what's not serving me well, right? And keeping myself out of that space. And eventually my whole thing was I need to find somebody who has survived what I've lived through and come out of it on the other side. And being in that journey, I understood that, well, I'm not going to find it over here, right?
Yeah.
So community is really important because we learn so much from each other. We're meant to be connected.
Right.
And through connection is how we heal and we grow and we thrive.
Kind of, it's our responsibility in recovery to find our own tribe, right? Our own support.
Absolutely. And I'm actually glad that you brought that up because it makes me think about all the things that we do that we feel so bad about and so shameful for when we're growing up, we do to survive,
Mm,
right?
right.
And, sometimes we don't make good decisions, but our soul thrives on connections. And sometimes that connection is superficial and you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, right? But
Mhm.
I always say that you're not responsible for what you had to do to survive. You're responsible you're accountable for when you realize something's not working and I have to do something new for my
Right.
happiness, right? What
Yeah.
you did to survive is resilience, right? And it's brought you here today. And now you say, oh my gosh, I'm such and such an age, and I see this is not working for me. Once you realize something's not working, that's when you're accountable to say, okay, I have to change something.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So appreciate you. So Kerri, do you mind to share like, some simple practice or tools that like our viewers can try at home to start their healing journey or as part of their daily routine?
Yeah. Um, self-care is really important, and there's not a one shoe fits everybody in this situation because everybody's different.
Yeah.
Exercise is really important. Actually getting out in the cold weather resets your nervous system, so that's a really good thing to do. I personally hate cold weather, so you're probably going to get me to run from the front porch to the mailbox, and I'm probably going to be screaming the whole way. I don't like cold weather at all. I feel like I'm allergic to it, but it does reset your nervous system. And
Right.
little things like that are great, right? Journaling is good, exercising is good, even if it's a simple yoga class.
Yeah.
um, I read a lot of self-help books. I mean, I think I was 10 years old reading books by Zig Ziglar. And it made me feel like reading that stuff, even though I wasn't in a room with somebody, I thought, wow, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but there's a lot of other people that aren't sharp right along with me. So it was like I was learning that there was other people in the world. And that was sort of for me as a kid, I needed that because I knew that there was a community out there. I didn't have it, I didn't have access to it. I was a little kid, but
Mm.
knowing, reading a lot of books and knowing that stuff really helped me to see the other side. So journal, get outside, exercise, try to find a local group in your area, create a group. I know at libraries, they have reading groups out there.
Yeah.
Create your own reading group at a library, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Meditate.
Yeah.
Meditation is good. Listen to music.
Mm.
There's paint, see how creative you are. I have a friend, Amy, who all of a sudden one day picked up a paintbrush and man, she can paint. She had, Amy, she paints
Yeah.
phenomenal things. I was like, wow. She's like, I have no idea where this came from. She just decided to sit down one day and be in silence with herself. And that's what happened.
Right. So you're talking about those different ways, like, top down and bottom up and horizontal, like so many ways that
Yeah.
we can practice every day.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I get up every morning at 4:30 and go to the gym, and let me tell you something. I don't want to do it. I
Right,
don't like it, but I know that if I don't, I'm not going to feel good, right? It's not going to be a good day for my soul because I need that for me. I need to move myself that way. So, you have to have a mindset of what you enjoy doing.
right, right. Yeah, that's definitely very disciplined.
It's
4:30.
tough. It's tough. I just know at the end of the day, I enjoy that I've done it. So
Mm,
once it's over, I'm like, yes, I'm done. You know,
yeah, part of your self-care routine too.
yeah, I know that I have to have it. It's rough, like when I'm sick or when COVID hit and you didn't have access to things. There's a huge difference in me.
Mm,
And a lot of times it's paying attention to things that you do that you realize you don't like because you're not even involving yourself in your passions anymore in life. Think about when you were a kid. What were your passions as a child, and how do they play a role in your life now? How
right.
could they play a role in your life now if they don't?
Mm, right. Yeah. Can you share an example of a breakthrough moment you witnessed in someone you coached? Like a little story, testimonial.
Gosh, there's so many. Um, I would have to say that, and this is really happens with a lot of clients, it's when they connect the dots and understand that their self-talk is really words that belong to somebody else. And they've just carried them all these years and they've connected those dots and thought, wow, I, I don't have to take that forward with me.
Right,
And they're carrying it forward, and it's usually someone that has really hurt them. It's not somebody that they respect or they value or they want their life to be like, right? But it's
right,
they connect those dots and they understand that they can move forward and on healthier terms because now they have a clear understanding of their own voice.
right. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at the complex trauma in Chinese community, um, I was just wondering if you can share some wisdom and advice or insight from your own culture or the Western culture, how parents who have experienced trauma themselves, they can make sure they don't pass it on to their children.
Yeah, because Lord Jesus, that's so common, right? You get stuck in that intergenerational trauma, the cycle of it.
Yeah,
So I know, like in my culture, nobody showed their feelings and emotions. You were viewed as being weak if you did. And so everybody was walking around angry by the time they were 20 because you haven't shown feelings or emotions your whole life.
right.
And I think from a parenting perspective, or even for your own self, it's about allowing yourself to feel.
Mm,
That's so important, right? We're meant to feel. Those feelings are there for a reason, and they're meant to be felt and moved out of our body, right? Whatever
right.
you there Deb Dana says, um story story what is it? Story versus state. I'm trying to remember exactly how she says it, but
Right,
whatever dialogue you're telling yourself is going to be the state of your nervous system in your body. Story follows state is what it's called.
right,
And so, understanding that you've held all these emotions in all these years, and now if you allow yourself to feel, you start letting things go. And it's not about forgetting that they happened. You can never forget that things happen, right? You can
right,
forgive people, but you can't forget that they happened. But it's about feeling those feelings like I was talking about earlier, to
Yeah.
let things go so you're not carrying them within you anymore. And being able, and this is just one example from my family, because nobody felt anything, but it was like once I started feeling and no longer shutting down my emotions, it allowed me to communicate better, but it also allowed me to flow better through
Mm,
all my feelings and emotions day to day, relating to people, having relationships with people, in conversation with people, right? It
mm,
sort of helped me move past my triggers in a calmer way so I could take the time to understand them, right? If I couldn't do it in that moment. So it's being able to feel and get an understanding about it so that you're not passing that on to another generation. And you
mm,
also have to see people for who they are. That was a big one for me too.
right,
When somebody says something that's hurtful to you, it's really not about you, it's about them. If
right, right.
people don't realize that, and you have to see people for who they are. If someone is being very hurtful and mean to you, that says everything about them. It
Mm,
says nothing about you as an individual, but we tend to take everything to heart, especially when we're not nurtured as children, because that's all we know, right? We've been forced to take the blame for the family. So,
right.
um, yeah, it's seeing your abusers for who they are, seeing people for who they are in your day to day life will really help you understand who your tribe of people are too.
Mm, right. So you're talking about the importance of getting to know yourself and others, especially like identifying your own feelings and emotions and
Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah, like I had a girlfriend one time that I really love. I still today I love her and I adore her.
mm,
But she tends to, like in our 20s when we would go out to have a drink or something, she
mm,
would end up, joining these dance competitions where you're, dancing and stuff. And that wasn't really my thing. So it was about putting boundaries around, okay, I want to hang out with you, but it's going to have to be on terms where I'm comfortable. We're not going to do this. But
right.
and then there's people where you see every time I'm around you, you're cussing me out. You're not talking nice to me, or maybe you've stolen from me, or you've badmouthed my spouse or whatever. It's about saying, that's a game changer for me in a relationship. It's not that I don't want to be friends in a hateful way, but I just understand that this relationship isn't serving me well. And we're
Right,
we're always taught, like a lot of us are brought up to be people pleasers too, right? So you
right,
kind of have to look at, if somebody's taking advantage of you all the time and they're the taker and it's never giving, they're telling you who they are, and it's important for us to listen to what they're telling us. So look at your
yeah,
relationships and understand that, right? And you can pass that on to your kids. I think children now need to be taught from the time they're born that their feelings are important, and they
yeah,
should be honored, and they should be acknowledged and validated, and they should listen to their intuition. And we should be teaching that even in kindergarten and in daycares and in preschools, right? Because we
yeah,
have to teach these kids that they are important in this world and they're valuable human beings, and we want them to walk around recognizing that.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely it's important to, you know, discern people's character, not just,
Yeah.
you know,
And
listen to what they say.
again, it's not about hate, because I feel like the world a lot of times today thinks if everybody doesn't agree, they don't like each other. It's not about that, right?
Right,
It's just
right,
about understanding, you know, it's got to be, I can be your friend, but I don't want to participate in this,
mm,
right? We got to have to find a way to be friends on a common ground where we're both comfortable,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Like has to
Or
be
or
a
not be
mutual
around them at
understanding.
all too, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This question is a little bit big, but like I'm just curious, like what's one thing our community can do to support each other better? You touch a little bit already.
Acknowledging and validating each other, it's
Mm,
really truly listening to one another, right?
mm,
Getting in the weeds with that person and trying to understand them. I always say that you're again, you're either standing in judgment of someone or you're standing in understanding and compassion. And if we all stood in understanding and compassion and tried to get to the bottom of things, um, we would gain a better understanding of one another. And then
Mm,
it's, I'm very interested in why you feel the way that you feel. I don't have to agree,
mm,
right?
mm,
But I think that's a great way to support one another because I know I've met people over the years and maybe one of those men or women were 50 years old and I was only 20 and I was not on the same page with them because I didn't have their wisdom. So
mm.
they'd be speaking from 50 years of knowledge and I'm coming from a 20-year-old and I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not making any sense. But
Right.
then when I hit my 30s and 40s, I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally get what they were saying now. I wish
Mhm.
I could go back and continue that conversation, right?
Right,
But at
right,
the time, I was standing in a place of judgment. Like, that's not good for me. I don't want to hear nothing about that, that,
right, right.
you know, instead of taking in what they were saying and trying to get an understanding. But it would hit me over the years, and it's when my soul got ready to receive those blessings, right?
Mm,
So that was a great way that I was supported. And I actually went back to some people that I had conversations with and said, man, you don't realize how much you've impacted my life now. Back then, I thought you didn't know nothing.
right. Like a
you know,
teenager, right?
but considering the fact I came out of a rough childhood, I
Yeah.
didn't my wisdom wasn't there yet, right? But now it's like I've gone back to them and like, wow, can we please have coffee again? Right. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about the growth and healing, right?
yeah, it's building a community together. You get to know one another and you see who you can spend time with. Like when I don't talk to you all the time, I'm like, hey, I got to catch up with Jane, right? I miss my
Right.
girl. So it's like, it's understanding you're building your own community.
Mm, true. So true.
Yeah.
Um, in Chinese culture, probably you already knew, there's often a focus on saving face, not to show weakness. How did this impact our trauma recovery, you think?
Oh, that's bad because you're not really able to be honest with yourself in that space,
Right,
right? It's like,
right,
yeah, you're not able to stand in your truth because everybody's worried about the feelings of everybody else. But really, you're not responsible for the feelings of other people. You're
right,
only
right.
responsible for your own feelings. And I mean, I'm not saying go out and hurt people's feelings. That's not what I mean. I just mean that you don't understand people's walk and sometimes people are sensitive to certain areas, and they're going to blame you for their feelings, but it's just so dangerous not to be able to live in your own truth, right? Because you're
Mm,
being told that your life is not your own and your voice is not your own.
right. So definitely like being authentic and being vulnerable with safe, supported people in our recovery journey is very important.
Yeah, and for those that you don't feel safe around, I always just say I appreciate that, but that's just not something I'm open to discuss.
Mm,
That's not something I want to participate in, or I'm just honest. I'm honest with myself because I feel like being that way, you're honoring the other person too, and you're helping them to look at themselves, right? Oh, wait a minute, why is that off the table, right? She's just put a huge boundary on me, right? It has them looking at themselves as well.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's silencing. I mean, that's what it is. A lot of these families, I know in my family, it was like, oddly enough, I did a video on this today.
Mm,
It was like, we're the parents. This is how it's going to be. And you're going to fall in line or you're going to suffer the consequences. You weren't allowed to question anything.
oh,
You
yeah.
weren't allowed, right? You weren't allowed to have an opinion on anything. I mean, this is just the way it's going to be.
Mm,
Well, in that kind of situation, it shuts you down, right?
right,
It,
right.
you're being told your life is not your own. It's going to be dictated by us. And we carry that into adulthood. And then we're letting everybody else dictate our lives,
Mm,
right?
yeah, yeah. All the people pleasing or fear.
Yeah, absolutely. People pleasing is a huge, huge, huge signal that someone has suffered complex trauma.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I think you already answered this, but what's your advice for someone who feels they can't talk about their struggles because of cultural expectations?
Yeah. I actually think that's very common
Mm,
because I mean nobody wants to lose their family, right?
right.
One no one, I mean, there's just nothing worse than feeling like you're not accepted by your own family. We come into this world feeling like we're going to be loved and honored and celebrated. And when that doesn't happen, it's
Yeah,
dreadful, you know.
yeah.
Um,
Devastated.
well, you come at it from a cultural perspective, but being online nowadays, there's so many groups and stuff you can find online that's going to be outside of your culture
Yeah.
or within a
That's,
culture that you feel like you fit
that's,
in with more. So
yeah,
if there's a lot of my clients that aren't comfortable showing their feelings and emotions, but yet they get in a room with me or a group with me and other people, and all of a sudden they're crying tears and they don't know where those tears are coming from. And it's because they
mm,
have entered a safe spot for themselves.
yeah,
So with that being said, if it's something that they can't find local, I would say go online and try to find a group that you can actually talk in and share in. And years ago, I think I was probably about 27, 28 years old. I actually had a group that I started myself online that I
uh,
got in and started chatting in, and people started joining. It was me just talking about these revelations I was having and experiences I was having in healing, and people come
wow.
along and they join, and you create your own group if you can't find one online. I mean, the world is so big today with being able to get online.
Yeah, yeah. That's beautiful. So, Carrie, if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self, what would you say besides what you already shared?
Yeah, I think I would probably tell myself that it's okay to feel angry and hurt or
Mm.
sad about what happened,
Mm,
that I don't have to carry the blame or the shame for the things that weren't my fault,
right.
and that someday when the time is right, my voice will be there and I will be
Mm,
heard.
mm.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. We all need to be heard. We all need to have a
Yeah.
voice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Um, what's the most rewarding part of the work you do now? Like being, mentor, trauma recovery coach, supervisor at the association.
It's really watching people's lives just come full circle, and
Mm,
they come into this relationship with me in whatever aspect, and they do the work, right? And they're finding the proper shoes to wear and the proper paths to walk, and they're learning what their needs are, and where their happiness is and what brings them joy. And
mm,
it's just watching them come full circle, and being able to build these lives that they really love, and get in
mm,
these relationships with people, whether it's friends or lovers or spouses, or even the dynamic of their relationships with their kids changing, right? And it's
mm.
bringing those families together so that they're just so happy with where they are. They don't wake up dreading life every day.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, so Carrie, for those who watching, what's the best way to start their healing journey today?
Well, depending, like I said, that's not a question that is going to be the same for everyone, but
Right.
talk to someone.
Mm,
Either hire someone, get a journal, join a group, do
mm,
something, make a decision. First thing, here's the first thing I would say.
yeah.
I want you to look in the mirror
Yeah.
and give yourself permission to honor you and put you first.
Mm,
That's what you should do. Your life is your life to live. It's not anybody else's life to live, it's yours. Give yourself permission to take care of you and put you first.
right. Right.
And then find that tool to do it, whether it's journaling, sitting with yourself, join a group,
Mm,
hire somebody, do whatever it is you need to do to take that first step. And every day,
mm,
make an effort to take
yeah.
that step and continue on that journey. I didn't
Mm,
get here by doing it mindlessly. It was years of journaling, years of trying different things, years of lessons learned, years of figuring out who I was. I did something for 6 months and I'm like, why did I even think that I liked doing this to begin with? And then I have to change something else because I saw that in one moment it served me well, but I've totally done grown out of that now. Right.
mm,
So it's every day living with intention, right? But it
mm,
starts with giving yourself permission to take care of you.
right. Right. Great. Um, Kerri, I also want to be able to bless you, and I'm just wondering where can people find you if they want to learn more about your work or get the support?
Oh, thank you for that. They can look me up on Kerri Coaching. It's Kerri
Mm,
coaching.com.
yeah.
They can also find me I'm on YouTube and all over social media, either under Kerri McKenna Reece or Kerri Coaching. Yeah. And
Okay.
just reach out. I'd love to have a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. We can put the information in our description too.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. I've enjoyed this. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you. So, remember, healing is possible and you don't have to do it alone. So thank you, Kerri, for sharing your story and wisdom. To everyone watching, take that first step today.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.